Welcome to the NBA DFS build, where we break down the NBA DFS main slate for DraftKings contests. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, and today we'll be looking at the main slate for Tuesday, January 30th. This video is sponsored by DFS Hero, which has a killer lineup optimizer and plenty of features that can help you score a GPP takedown. We will be using the DFS Hero tool for our projections, ownership, and much more. If you want to check it out, there is a link at the bottom in our video description of this video. As for today, we have a nice 5-game slate. If we helped you at all in this video, please give us a like on the video and also consider subscribing to the channel so you can be alerted for future videos. It is a nice 5-game slate, but it's also pretty problematic. Tons of injury news. Starting right away with the first game, we got the Lakers at Atlanta. Lakers are 5.5 point underdogs. That line could move a little bit with the news that Anthony Davis is out. And I think we still don't know officially what's going to happen with LeBron James, even though we should. I would imagine that comes out soon. But this game has a 248 total. It's got a decent spread right now, and it's looking pretty interesting. Taylor, who do you like starting out on the Lakers side?
Yeah, I think he said he's planning on playing LeBron, so not expecting him to be out. He looks good, of course, with no AD. He and Reeves get the biggest usage boost on the team. Reeves for 5.9 on DK is just too cheap. Christian Wood, of course, projected to start with AD out at center. He's only 3.6. Really good per minute guy, 1.23 points per minute without Davis. D'Lo gets a nice bump. Taurean Prince should see the minutes. Even Rui could get a bump in minutes. Jared Vanderbilt, another cheap guy, already getting rotation minutes. It's going to be hard to get away from them, of course. Wood is the core play of core plays just because he's so cheap. And I think D'Angelo for 7-1 or 7K flat, 7-1 looks really good. The matchup against Atlanta is phenomenal, especially if DeJounte Murray sits. Yeah, it's going to be hard to not play mini Lakers tonight.
Yeah, Christian Wood not coming up as chalk just yet, but I would imagine that could end up changing quite a bit.
Will?
Huh?
It will change.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So right here, DFS Hero is not projecting to be chalky, but that will change. But he is already looking at as he's looking like a very good boom play, 34% boom right here. And honestly, all the Lakers project extremely well in this tool. So, yep, I'm right there with you. Obviously, LeBron feels borderline core play here, but you can make a case for just about everybody. I personally never like to play Christian Wood, at least the Lakers edition. I used to like to play him when he's on, the Mavs and the Rockets and stuff. So, but yeah, might need to factor him in here. I will note Rui and Prince also will probably pop here with Brow out. A lot to like on the other side too. The Hawks obviously have Trae Young up top. DeJounte Murray is questionable. DeAndre Hunter is also iffy for this game. But otherwise they'd be mostly at full strength, although losing Murray would be significant. Do you like Trae, and how do you think Murray possibly being out impacts Atlanta tonight?
Him being out would make Bogdanovic look pretty good. Started the last game. Usage will come up, of course, but I don't really see much to like if everyone's in. Trae Young, of course, is a fine run back. Matchup's not a bad one. They do have a very high total at 126.75, so I see the merit. Capella does have room for upside on the 5.6 salary on DK, but overall, this team doesn't really look that good to me, honestly.
Yeah, it's mostly just Trae for me. I think if I'm going to be playing LeBron and a bunch of other Lakers, Trae is a pretty good run back, especially since we still have no idea what's going to happen with Joel Embiid, and we lost Brow on the slate. So there are no real, reliable studs to speak of on the slate right now. It's like right now it's LeBron, and that's it. And he's ancient, so it's a little bit scary. But Trae looks pretty appealing on the other side of the game. And unless DeJounte is out, I'm with you. I would not get to any other Hawks. Moving on here, we have the Pacers against the Celtics. Very high total. Looks like a good game environment with a 245 total. Tyrese Halliburton also is due back. I feel like there are a few questionable guys here. Let's see. We have Miles Turner, Benedict Mathurin, and Jalen Smith are all questionable. That would be significant because I would imagine Isaiah Jackson would end up being a pretty interesting value among other guys, I guess. This is a 7-point spread with the Celtics favored at home. Al Horford has been ruled out. Porzingis is still questionable after sitting out last night. And as we know with Boston, you just never know. Another vet or two could end up being listed questionable or ruled out here. So right away on the Pacers side, how are you feeling about the return of Halliburton? And do you like anybody else for tournaments?
As things stand, no. Just because with everyone in, there are a lot of bodies here. Siakam and Halliburton should see 30-plus minutes, but Halliburton should be limited, dealing with a hamstring injury lately. Mathurin is okay. Jalen Smith, if he plays and if Miles Turner's out, looks great, assuming he starts again as he did the other day. But as of now, with everyone in, don't really see much that stands out on Indiana.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here. Flipping over to the Boston side, Jason Tatum, we talked about him yesterday, and he's still stuck at that 9.2K price tag. Too cheap. He was too cheap yesterday. He went for almost 60 fantasy points, and now he's in an amazing spot against the Pacers. So I'm assuming you think the same thing you thought yesterday. Assuming Boston doesn't surprise us or anything. Who do you like here outside of Tatum?
Porzingis, if he plays, looks decent. Under 8K. No Horford, no Cornette for them tonight, so they're pretty much lacking their entire center rotation. If Porzingis is out, we might get into the Queta discussion again. He's 4-1, so he's not as punty as Christian Wood, but I wouldn't mind that as kind of a leverage play. Christian Wood is not like a lock to break the slate, even if he starts. So Queta looks like a decent pivot if he starts for Boston. Otherwise, Jaylen Brown, okay. Drew Holiday, reasonably priced, but Tatum's certainly the standout, especially if LeBron's going to be more popular.
Yeah, I agree. I'm mostly just Tatum, and if Porzingis is in, he's in my player pool, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a priority for me. Although I will note that the Pacers are like dead last in points in the paint. I think we've talked about that before. I feel like they fluctuate with the Wizards. It's like every week it's one of them are dead. They're probably just 29th and 30th at all times. But yeah, it's a good matchup. And not that Zinger really makes his money down low all the time. He's more of a jump shooter, but I'm sure with the matchup here, he might take advantage. Moving on, we got the Jazz against the Knicks. Both these teams played last night, so I think the fatigue is offsetting. The Knicks are 4-point favorites with a 229 total, so it's really not so bad. And obviously, the Jazz have a lot of negatives as far as like defensive red flags here. They're 8th in pace, 24th in overall defense, dead last in fast break points allowed per game, 29th in assists allowed, 28th in three-point makes allowed. This is an awesome matchup for the Knicks. So provided they're not tired, New York should look pretty appealing. On the flip side, not a great matchup for Utah on the road here, but starting with the Jazz, who stands out for you?
It's really just marketing. You can make the same case for Olynyk that you can make for Queta, in theory. Just kind of a cheap pivot that will not be very popular, but still only seeing around 20 minutes off the bench, so it's hard to get too excited about that. I suppose Sexton is in play just because he has a role, but that role is pretty volatile. Hard to break this team down on a night-to-night basis and have much confidence in anyone except for Markkanen.
Yeah, I agree, and he's really not a priority here. He does have a 21% boom rating, and he's not really going to be very owned, but he just doesn't really stand out. Just the main thing would be he's cheap. So if you don't want to go and pay up for studs on this slate, which there's an argument to be made that you may not have to, he does look totally fine at 4.1. Only other guy I will point out is Jordan Clarkson at 5.8. I mean, he's very scoring dependent, and the Utah guards are just kind of eating into each other a little bit. But at 5.8, he looks a little bit interesting, especially with all these dumpster dives we're going to be making. On the other side, you have the Knicks. Obviously, Jalen Brunson without Julius Randle is going to have a ton of usage. But it was Dante DiVincenzo who was the slate breaker, as you know, after showing me your winning ticket. He did extremely well last night. But the problem is he's shaping up as uber chalk. So how do you feel about DiVincenzo chalk, and do you like anybody else for the Knicks?
I don't think it's bad just because he's still underpriced for the role he's going to play. He topped 40 last night with Anunoby out. So if Anunoby's out again, it's going to be hard to project him for much less than that. Anunoby is questionable. Anunoby himself, I think, is capable of playing 40 plus if he's in, which makes him pretty interesting as kind of a lower owned piece from this team. Otherwise, it's really the same as yesterday with Hart, Brunson. Quentin Grimes, major chalk last night as a bust, but he did play over 30 minutes, as did Precious Achua. Achua's kind of pricey. Even if Anunoby's out, I don't have much interest there. Grimes is still cheap enough to play. I don't think he'll be as popular as he was yesterday, especially off the bench. I think he's fine. Have more faith if Anunoby's out, but yeah, I don't think DiVincenzo and Hart are bad chalk today either.
No, I don't think it's bad chalk. The matchup is awesome and the role is great. Still good price, really good projection, 44% boom rating for DiVincenzo. So everything checks out. The only problem is that 52% ownership rate. I mean, it is a smaller slate, so it could easily be a spot where just let's not get cute, eat that good chalk and move along. But you could have a massive edge if DiVincenzo, who is known to be a pretty inconsistent DFS player, if he does not meet expectations here, that could be a significant edge for you. And obviously, if OG comes back in and plays this game, then the interest in DiVincenzo wanes considerably. I'm going to go with you on Grimes here. A little shocking that his usage or his ownership projection is so high, but he is cheap and it's a small slate. I might end up actually this time. I faded him yesterday. I might end up going to him this time and fading DiVincenzo if this ownership holds. Moving on, the Raptors are visiting the Bulls in Chicago. The Bulls are 6.5-point favorites. This game has a 227 total. The Raptors are without RJ Barrett. Emmanuel Quickly, I think he might be doubtful. Let's see. I'll double check that. No, he's questionable. He and Jakob Poeltl are both questionable. So a lot of value for the Raptors potentially if one or both of these guys sit. I think on the Chicago side, Levine is still out and Patrick Williams has been added to the injury report. Starting with Toronto, who do you like tonight?
Yeah, I don't think Quickly's going to play. Not sure about Poeltl, but it's kind of the same thing we saw on Sunday where these guys are kind of going to project really well for tons of minutes. Quickly is doubtful from what I see. I don't know if that's official, but not expecting him in. Trent, reasonably priced. Bruce Brown should start with Barrett, not expected to play. Ditto for Schroeder. They're all still reasonably priced and potentially falling behind like the LA guys and the Knicks, kind of comparable value. I don't think they're bad pivots. Wara kind of broke it on Sunday in 30 minutes off the bench. He's only 4.2. He could fly under the radar again tonight. Not sure you can have faith in the minutes, but obviously the ceiling is there if he does get the minutes. And then Barnes looks like a good kind of mid-range spend in the LeBron and Tatum range at 8.8.
Yeah, I don't think I can do the Nuora thing, but I get your point. Obviously, if Poeltl's out, you can do the Jonte Porter, Thad Young dance, which,
No thanks.
Yeah, and no thanks. I will just say, though, if a lot of the ownership is going to flock to Christian Wood and the other Lakers guys, I mean, they probably won't be owned for good reason. But I actually like Scotty Barnes a lot. Decent projection. And obviously with two playmakers and ball handlers off the floor for him, he could just have free reign here and end up crushing. Schroeder, Bruce Brown, Gary Trent, all totally viable. Feels like they're kind of eat into each other, but I will note that it's a pretty good matchup for Gary Trent on the outside. So he looks particularly appealing given his price. But he's pretty score independent, so just know that there could be safer values to be had. On the other side are the Bulls. The big three are intact: Vooch, DeRozan, Kobe White. They all look good. Vooch is projecting for the most ownership. They all project decently. Who do you like for the Bulls?
Pretty much everyone. They always seem to be too cheap. They are again here, under 8 each of them. White, Vooch, and DeRozan, of course. I think Vooch and White are the most interesting just because we've seen White play like 40-ish minutes every single night with Levine out. Should see the same thing tonight, and the Toronto defense is cratered since their trades. Caruso, Dosunmu, fine. Dosunmu, the better value of the two, but minute should be there for both. Caruso is not going to, I assume, garner much attention up in the 6K range. And I don't really want to mess with the Phillips, Dalen Terry conversation at the bottom, so I think those are easy fades tonight.
No, that seems like it was kind of a fluky situation there, but we'll see, I guess. Yeah, I'm with you on Vooch and White over DeMar. Vooch is carrying more ownership, but it's Vooch and White with a pretty nice boom rating here compared to DeMar, who's not bad at 19%, but I think those guys just look better and they're cheaper. Also worth noting that the Raptors are 25th in assists allowed per game and 25th in points inside the paint allowed per game. So those rankings kind of favor Vooch and White a little bit, I think. All right, moving on. Last game tonight, we got the Sixers facing the Warriors on the road. The Sixers are currently 3.5-point underdogs. They have Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid both questionable, and they are continuing to be without DeAnthony Melton. So there could be a little value here, and obviously with no news out yet, and possibly no news until after the lineups lock, you could possibly get Joel Embiid at very, very low ownership, and maybe even just because there's a lot of good plays earlier on this slate. So starting right away with the Sixers, are you liking Joel Embiid here at potential low ownership, or are you not really feeling the risk tonight?
It's hard not to like him, just because it's Embiid. He's been crushing all year, but it does seem like he's legit hurt right now. And I have no read whatsoever on whether he's going to play in this game. He's also more expensive than we've seen in quite a while at $12K, but if you're getting Embiid on a 5-game slate at single-digit ownership potentially, that's obviously something you want to look into and potentially get a piece of. Same with Maxey. I don't know if he's playing either. Obviously, both didn't play last night. They got wrecked by Portland. If these guys are out again, we're looking at Oubre potentially leading the team in usage. Tobias Harris probably gets a bump. Beverly's minutes should be there. Paul Reed, if Embiid is out, is the main beneficiary of that situation. So a lot of moving parts. No other games to pivot to. Like you said, this one starts way after the others. So there's a high risk, high reward stance you can take if you want to build for the potential news if we don't have it pre-lock.
Yeah, I don't really see. I don't have a problem with it either way. I just think it makes sense to take a stand here. Either you're going to eat some of this value and bank on the top guys being out, or you're just going to try to get Joel Embiid at sub 10% ownership, which is probably going to be my strategy. And then you can just build it in a way that if he's out, then you can pivot down to Maxey and somebody else. I probably have 2 guys going into this late game, so I can make that switch. And by the way, whenever you do this, make sure you test it out so the math adds up. You don't want to accidentally have Embiid or something and be $100 away from making that vital swap here. But NBA DFS is so much about the late swap. So if you can go into the situation with Embiid at no ownership, regardless of what happens, I think that could be a massive, massive edge on this slate. All right. Other team involved in this game is the Warriors. Not a good matchup for them at all if Philly's at good strength, or at full strength, rather. The Sixers, they give up the second fewest three-point makes per game in the NBA. And obviously Embiid doesn't let you do a lot of damage down low when he's healthy. So if they are at full strength, it's not a good matchup for Golden State. But if they're not, the Warriors could be interesting, and especially, like I said, if you do have Embiid and all of a sudden he's ruled out, you could pivot to Curry. As long as you have that flexibility. But I want to see what you think also about the Warriors here.
Yeah, I think Green and Kuminga are both really interesting in the 6K range. The minutes have been there for both, even with Draymond back. Kuminga is just playing really well. He's still underpriced on DK for under 6K, I think. Otherwise, don't love it. I think if Embiid's out and Maxey's in, I'd rather play Maxey than Curry in that range. Obviously, if both are out and you're stuck, then yeah, play Curry. But those are really the only kind of spendy options in this game. Not too psyched about Clay or Curry or Wiggins or Pajemski with this team pretty much fully healthy right now, except for Chris Paul. So pretty much Draymond or Kuminga for me.
Yeah, I'm not fully on board with the Draymond love, but he is popping 30%, 31% boom rating, and he's just popping in projections in general. Good price. Kuminga, same story, really. So I see it, and I'm totally fine with that. It's just going to depend on, what other value you like with this slate being so small and with this being such an island game, 2 hours after the last game ends up starting. So I'm with you on not Curry is not a priority for me at all for the first time. I always, for some reason, I just have an affinity for Curry, and I gravitate towards him sometimes. But it's not a good matchup if Philly is at full strength, and there's other guys within that range, like you said, Scotty Barnes, Brunson. Just they project way better. But if you do want Embiid, like I think I might on this slate, I think obviously Curry is your backup plan, and then you just have to roll with it. All right, so that mostly does it for the game-by-game breakdown here. We're going to try to wrap it up in a second. But before we do, let's finish with our number one fade of the slate, as well as our number one play to build around. So starting with fades, who's the number one guy? Who's the chalkiest guy here that you are going to end up possibly fading?
That's a tough one. This is another one where I don't really feel like there's a lot of bad chalk out there. Maybe some of the Toronto stuff, like Bruce Brown or Schroeder, is avoidable up in the 5K-ish range. Draymond, like you said, maybe a little bit fragile compared to what the ownership should be. But I do think he's reasonably priced and the minutes are there. I have no qualms with that at all, really. I guess you could say Grimes. If Grimes is, again, going to be popular enough, there's a low enough floor there to where you can easily find pivots and not miss out on Quentin Grimes night.
Yeah. Mine would be DiVincenzo just purely because of the number. 52 is just egregious. I like him as a play. I mean, everything checks out, but sometimes if it's that glaring, I'm just going to take the stance against him and hope it breaks my way. I'll double down on Draymond. I think I prefer Kuminga just slightly over Draymond. And if you're playing for Joel Embiid to be in, I don't see how that's a good spot for Draymond necessarily. On the flip side, who's your number one core play to build around if you have one at this point? It's tough. There's a lot of stuff that needs to shake out still, but is there anybody that you're building around as we stand?
It's probably Brunson. If people are scared to go back to the well after he was good but not great last night, I'm happy to go back to that here in a better matchup against, or a comparable matchup against Utah. D'Lo, Tatum, I don't think those are bad core plays either. LeBron, I'm not really, I don't have him as a conviction either way. I think he's fine, but if Tatum is going to be a little more contrarian, I'm happy to get to Tatum instead.
Yeah, I don't think I'm fully decided yet. When I came into this slate, it was Anthony Davis. He was my number one build around. So I guess as just a direct pivot because of the game environment, and now that he's out, LeBron would be my core play. And then I'm going to probably try to make it work so I can get Embiid. And then if Embiid's out, I'd pivot to Curry. So I'll probably be saving two options at the end of this night, and we'll see how it goes. And starting off with LeBron, some of the cheap Lakers, and some of these other punts that we're talking about. It's worth noting, by the way, some of the guys you mentioned, Jalen Brunson, Draymond Green, D'Lo, these guys are all top 10 for boom rating. So the system loves them quite a bit. So it could be interesting. And once again, by the way, if you want to test out the system for yourself and see if it works for you, there's a link at the bottom in our video description of this video today. And also give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, and that'll help us out quite a bit. I think that does it overall for us. We wish you luck, and we'll see you next time.